Sirefather, I apologize for not being able to write to you for some time as my cadet studies consume almost my entire day and night cycle. We have just finished our History of the Republic course, and as I learn about the dark times before the formation of the Republic, I have come to understand them more. I learned of how the Republic came to be and what their society is built upon. I know that you are aware of some of the history, but I will share what I have learned with you. By the year 2030, the Western nations were suffering from a severe economic depression and widespread social crises as their policies backfired on them, and they almost collapsed under the weight of massive government subsidies and welfare programs. Faced with bankruptcies, demographic collapse, and internal dissension, the Western nations retreated from the world stage and became isolationists. The power vacuum and the sudden loss of financial and economic support from this withdrawal had a domino effect as dozens of poorer nations around the world suffered civil wars and widespread famine. Regional wars cropped up all over the world, and old rivalries and hatreds reared their heads and plunged over 1 billion people into a dark age. Taking advantage of the chaos and the retreat of the Western world, in 2032 the Russian Federation and the Republic of China joined together in a military and economic union called the Eurasian Combine, and rapidly became the preeminent power of the world. Utilizing the vast untapped natural resources of the Russian Federation, the manpower of the Republic of China, and the Silk Road Initiative they built, the Eurasian Combine was able to subject the entire continent to an economic stranglehold and forced many smaller nations to join them. Some nations that refused to join were subjected to embargoes and blockades that quickly caused their governments to collapse from lack of food and fuel, while other weaker nations were invaded and quickly subjugated. In a stunning achievement of diplomacy and manipulation, the Eurasian Combine was able to convince the Republic of Turkey, at this point a dictatorship in all but name, to leave the European Union and NATO. With the military support of the Eurasian Combine, in 2034 the Republic of Turkey launched an invasion of North Africa and the Middle East with their large professional military. In less than 6 years they had conquered North Africa and the entire Arab Muslim world, and their territory stretched from Morocco to the former borders of Iran. Israel fought alone for 3 years before evacuating as many of their remaining citizens as they could, and they fled to the European nations that would take them. The remnants of their military stayed behind and fought on, and it was only when they were overwhelmed by an onslaught of chemical weapons and the destruction of Tel Aviv with nuclear weapons that they finally relinquished Israel. The few surviving military units escaped in a rescue flotilla protected by their remaining Navy ships and fought their way through the Turkish Navy in the eastern Mediterranean, landing in scattered groups along the coasts of Greece, Italy, France, and Spain. Their conquest complete, Turkey renamed this new empire the Turkey Caliphate, and in 2040 they became the third signatory to the Eurasian Combine. On the African continent, the nations of South Africa and Nigeria joined together in an alliance in 2032, and with visions of a Pax Africana under their rule, launched a series of attacks against their neighbors. By 2041, the entire continent of Africa apart from the north was now unified under their despotic rule, and they named this new entity the African Bloc. Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan formed an alliance called the Pacific Coalition in 2036 and heavily fortified their nations. They built up their military capabilities and instituted a coalition-wide draft to bolster their troop levels, hoping to ward off an attack by the Eurasian Combine. The only real bastion of hope in the world during these dark times was in South America. Faced with the dire turn of events worldwide and the economic collapses they endured, the people rose up in popular uprisings and overthrew their corrupt governments. Tired of the endemic graft, gang violence, and the destruction of their habitats, the uprisings spread in a tidal wave as new governments were created and martial law was declared. Violent gangs were hunted down and eliminated. Corrupt officials were arrested and sentenced to life in prison, and the drug trades and criminal enterprises that engaged in trafficking and kidnappings were ruthlessly exterminated. What followed was known as the rebirth, and in 2039 Central and South America unified under a single democratic government known as the South American Union. The South American Union turned their eyes to the failing state of Mexico and held high-level talks with the United States and laid out a plan to wipe out the cartels and remove the corrupt Mexican government. The United States agreed on the condition that the Mexican people be allowed to hold elections and choose to create their own new democratic government or join the South American Union. The SAU agreed to this proposal, and in 2040 the Mexican military went on the offensive with the support of the United States and the SAU, and declared war on the cartels. Bolstered by Mexican self-defense and vigilante militias, the Mexican military engaged in a series of bloody urban battles with the cartels, corrupt police, and traitorous military units, and after a year of vicious fighting, claimed victory. The victorious Mexican military then assumed control of the government and, in a series of purges, rooted out and hunted down corrupt officials and their criminal allies. In 2042, the Mexican people, under the watchful eye of the military, held free elections and created a new republican form of government, choosing to become a member of the SAU. Such was the state of the world by 2043, as 75% of mankind suffered under repressive dictatorships. The Eurasian Combine waited for a chance to bring more of the world under their control, and continued to consolidate their recent conquests and build their militaries. The chance they were waiting for happened in the year 2044, when the internal issues plaguing the United States finally came to a head and the Second American Civil War began. The lights-out warning just came on, and I must get ready for the night cycle. I will tell you the rest of the story in my next letter. With love to you and birth mother, Alexa.